Imagine the intense emotional stages women go through when you're gone forever. No texts, no calls, no contact. In a world where people take others for granted, let's flip the script. Walk away, and I promise, their world will shift in ways they never expected. If you've ever felt like someone treated you as an afterthought, this is for you. Today, we're diving into a powerful truth, what they really feel when you disappear from their life. We'll break down 10 intense emotional stages they go through when you leave, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why sometimes the most powerful move is silence. No explanations, no second chances, just walking away. If you're ready to reclaim your worth, if you're ready to make them feel your absence like never before, drop a comment below. I'm done being an option. Because after this, you never will be again. And stay tuned until the very end. There's a bonus 10th emotional stage that you won't want to miss. If you're serious about changing how they see you forever, watch this video all the way through. Let's get started. The first stage is the sting of rejection. This is where it all begins. They never truly expected you to disappear. In their mind, you were always going to be there. The one who cared, who made the plans, who put in the effort. You were their constant, their safety net, until you weren't. When you vanish, it's like hitting them with a reality check they never saw coming. You've probably heard the saying, "You don't know what you have until it's gone." That's exactly what happens. Your absence isn't just about not being there, it's about taking away everything you represented, the comfort, the validation, the certainty, and that's when it stings. But this isn't just a surface-level rejection. It cuts deep, because for the first time they realize they never had control over you. People like to believe they can treat someone as an option without consequences. They assume you'll always be around, no matter how little they give in return. But when you remove yourself, when you snatch that safety net away, the panic sets in. Suddenly they're free-falling, wondering, how did I let this happen? How did I lose control? The sting of rejection hits hardest when they take you for granted. They assumed your presence was permanent. Maybe they even convinced themselves they were doing you a favor by keeping you around. But here's the irony. You were the one holding everything together. They weren't giving you anything. You were the foundation, the one making it work. So here's what you need to understand. If you want them to feel the rejection, you can't warn them. No goodbyes, no ultimatums, no asking for their attention, just go. Ghost them. The lack of explanation hits harder than any words ever could. Your silence forces them to confront their own actions. It tells them without a single word that you're done being disrespected. And when you walk away, don't look back. Let them feel the weight of their choices. Let them deal with the aftermath of losing the one person who never should have been taken for granted. The second stage is the void of missing you. Here's where it gets interesting. After the sting of rejection fades, something even heavier sets in. Emptiness. They never thought they'd miss you, did they? In fact, they probably convinced themselves that your absence wouldn't matter. If they leave, I'll just move on, they told themselves. But what happens when you actually disappear? They start to feel the void. And it's not just any void. It's the kind that lingers, the kind that makes even the most mundane moments feel hollow. They go about their usual routine, doing the same things they've always done. But something is missing. Suddenly they realize it was you who brought meaning to their life. You were the energy, the warmth, the emotional stability. Without you, everything feels bland. When people take someone for granted, they assume they're just part of the background, easily replaced. But reality hits hard when they discover that no one else brings what you did. They might try to fill the void with someone new, surround themselves with friends, or distract themselves with work. But no matter what they do, that emptiness lingers. It follows them, reminding them of what they lost. And here's the irony. They didn't appreciate you when they had you. Maybe they thought they could do better. Maybe they assumed you'd always be there. But the second you leave, the perspective shifts. They start missing the small things, the conversations, the laughter, the way you made them feel understood. And here's how you make sure they feel it completely. Cut off their access to you. Block them, delete their number. Make it impossible for them to casually check up on you. Because every time they try to reach out and find nothing, the void grows deeper. Every time they search for you and come up empty, the reality sinks in. You're truly gone. Let them sit in that emptiness. Let them wrestle with the loss. Because people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. And when you disappear, you don't just leave. You leave a void that no one else can fill. The third stage is overwhelming curiosity. By this stage, the void has consumed them and desperation starts to creep in. Curiosity takes over, and it's relentless. The biggest question haunting them now is, where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? They become obsessed with knowing what's happening in your life because for the first time, they have no access to you. You're a mystery now, and there's nothing more unsettling than being shut out by someone they once had control over. In the age of social media, this stage becomes even more intense. They'll stalk your Instagram, check your Facebook, scroll through your TikTok, any platform that might give them the slightest clue about your life. But here's the kicker. You've gone completely dark. No posts, no stories, no updates, nothing. And it drives them insane. Why? Because human beings hate the unknown. The moment you vanish, their mind starts racing with questions. Have they moved on? Are they with someone else? Are they actually happier without me? They can't handle not knowing, so they become fixated on trying to find answers. They'll dig through old conversations, scroll through your tagged photos, and even reach out to mutual friends just to gather intel. But here's the sad part. They'll never admit they care. They'll ask indirect questions and pretend they're just curious, but deep down they're desperate for a glimpse into your life. Curiosity is a powerful emotion. When someone can't get the answers they crave, their mind fills in the gaps. And more often than not, they assume the worst. You're thriving without them. They start picturing you with someone else, imagining you laughing, growing, and glowing in your absence. And that thought, it eats away at them. What started as a curiosity quickly spirals into an obsession. And here's where you hold all the power. The less they know, the more they need to know. You become the one thing they can't stop thinking about. So, what's the move? Become a ghost. Completely vanish from their radar. No updates, no hints, no breadcrumbs. Let them wonder. Let them pick up their phone 100 times a day just to find nothing. And with each failed attempt to check on you, they'll sink deeper into their own thoughts, their own insecurity, their own regret. You don't need to give them answers. Give them silence. That alone will do more damage than any words ever could. The fourth stage is deep self-reflection. Now we enter dangerous territory for them. This is where self-reflection begins, and trust me, it's not pretty. After days or even weeks of obsessing over where you are and what you're doing, their focus shifts inward. And that's when the hard questions start creeping in. Was I too distant? Was I too cold? Did I push them away? Did I mess this up? Regret seeps in, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. Here's the reality. People hate admitting when they've made mistakes. It's human nature to avoid blame, to justify actions, to pretend nothing was wrong. But when you disappear, you force them to confront the truth. And this time, there's no escape. Without you around to reassure them, smooth things over, or absorb their emotional detachment, they're left with only their own behavior to analyze. And it's not a fun experience. Suddenly, every moment replays in their mind. The times they ignored your texts, dismissed your feelings, treated you like an afterthought. And now, it hits them hard. Because deep down they realize they had a good thing going, but they took it for granted. This stage is especially powerful because it's internal. They can't blame you anymore. You're gone. There's no one left to argue with, no excuses to fall back on. The only person they can hold responsible is themselves. And that's a painful realization. As time goes on, the reflection deepens. The more they analyze the past, the clearer it becomes. They messed up. The guilt builds, eating away at them, and they start wishing they could rewind time, fix things, and undo the damage. But by now, it's too late. Here's your move. Do nothing. Don't reach out. Don't explain yourself. Don't try to make them see the error of their ways. Let them figure it out on their own. Self-reflection is only truly powerful when it happens internally. The more time they spend sitting with that guilt, the deeper the lesson sinks in. Let them feel it. Let them sit in their regret. Because once they realize they were the reason things fell apart, that's when the real suffering begins. The fifth stage is the urge to pursue you. After weeks of self-reflection, something shifts inside them. They go from questioning themselves to wanting you back. The tables have turned. You were once the one who cared, who reached out, who put in all the effort. But now, it's their turn. Suddenly they can't stop thinking about you. They can't fight the urge to reach out. And worst of all, they're consumed by one overwhelming thought. Is it too late to make things right? And that's when the chase begins. They'll start testing the waters with, "I've been thinking about you." A random like on an old Instagram post. A comment on something just to see if you respond. A late-night text after a few drinks, hoping to rekindle what was lost. They've officially gone from taking you for granted to desperately wanting you back. And this is where you hold all the power. Here's the key. You don't need to respond. In fact, you shouldn't. Let them feel the desperation. Let them wonder if you've moved on. The more they chase you, the more they realize they've lost control, and that drives them crazy. Your silence is your strongest tool. If you respond, you shift the power back to them. And after everything you've worked for, why give that away? Let them pursue you, but don't reward their efforts. Make them feel the frustration of wanting something they can no longer have. The sixth stage is the battle between relief and regret. When you first disappear, they might feel a brief sense of relief, a fleeting moment where they convince themselves that they're finally free. I don't have to deal with them anymore. Maybe for a short while, they even feel good about it. But here's the truth. That so-called freedom is nothing more than an illusion. At first, it feels exciting. They go out, surround themselves with friends, swipe right a few times, and distract themselves. For a moment, they think they're fine. But then, as soon as they're alone, sitting in their quiet apartment, scrolling through their phone, looking at an empty inbox, that's when reality crashes in. They start to realize something unsettling. The freedom they thought they wanted? It's actually emptiness. The people they thought could replace you? They're just surface-level distractions. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It seems like a quick fix, but in the end, it only makes them more dehydrated, more desperate, and more regretful. This is where regret starts sinking in. In today's world of casual dating and quick flings, people often assume that moving on is easy. I'll just find someone new. But replacing a genuine connection, that's not so simple. They quickly learn that you can't replace emotional stability, real depth, and meaningful conversations with a one-night stand or a temporary distraction. And that's the realization that knocks them flat on their back. Here's what you need to do. Let them experience this so-called freedom. Don't rush back in when they start feeling regret. Don't ease their suffering. Don't give them an emotional safety net. Let them sit in that emptiness, the one they thought would feel so good. Because while the relief they first felt was temporary, your absence? That will haunt them in ways they never expected. The seventh stage is the desire to play the game. Once regret settles in, panic takes over. They feel out of control, and now they want that control back. But they don't know how. So what do? They start playing games. They suddenly act distant on purpose. They post pictures with other people, try to look happy without you, and make their life seem better than ever. Maybe they post, a cryptic status about moving on, a selfie that's trying a little too hard, a subtle dig aimed at you, but not directly. It's all one big attempt to get inside your head. They want you to wonder what they're up to question if they've moved on, to feel jealous. But here's the thing. You're not playing anymore. You've outgrown the games. You've moved beyond their childish attempts at manipulation. And because of that, you don't even notice. Here's what most people don't understand. People assume that jealousy, manipulation, and playing hard to get will always work. They think if they throw enough bait, you'll bite, that you'll start chasing again. But what happens when you stop chasing? When you've grown tired of the game? That's when they panic even more. They throw everything at you. Passive-aggressive comments, exaggerated posts, subtle digs meant to provoke you. But none of it works. Because you don't give them the attention they crave. You don't react. You don't engage. And that drives them absolutely mad. Here's your move. Ignore the cryptic posts. Don't react to their photos. Refuse to play along. Their game only works if you participate. The moment you stop responding is the moment they realize they've lost their power over you. And that is what truly destroys them. The 8th stage is the crushing weight of silence. Silence is one of the most powerful weapons you can wield when you vanish. The absence of your words, your texts, your presence, it screams louder than anything you could ever say. And for them, it's unbearable. At first they might brush it off. But then, the silence settles in, and it's heavy. This is where the real suffering begins. With nothing left but their own thoughts, they start questioning everything. Why didn't I answer their calls? Why was I always too busy to reply? Did I take them for granted? And now, they would do anything to hear from you again. Silence is torturous for someone used to control. They expect you to reach out. They expect you to ask, "What's wrong?" They expect you to chase. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you disappear completely, leaving them alone in the quiet, wondering if they've lost you forever? They can't process it. Every minute without a word from you feels like an eternity. And the longer the silence stretches, the more their anxiety grows. We live in a world of instant gratification. Texts, calls, notifications, social media. Everyone expects a response, but you give them nothing. And that's what breaks them. They're used to the noise of a relationship, the constant back and forth, even the arguments. But silence? Silence is deafening. Let your silence be your power. Don't break it. Don't explain yourself. Don't give them closure. Let them sit in the quiet and feel the full weight of their own actions. Because soon, they'll realize. Losing access to you is far worse than any argument they could have ever won. The 9th stage is the fear that brings them crawling back. Now this is where it all comes crashing down. Fear. This is the part they never saw coming. For so long they were comfortable. They assumed you'd always be there. They took your presence for granted, believing that, no matter what, you'd always stick around. But now, you're gone. And suddenly, they're terrified. The fear hits harder than anything else. The questions start eating away at them. What if I lost them for good? What if they've moved on? What if they're with someone else? And that thought, it destroys them. They picture you laughing with someone new. They imagine you making memories with someone else. And the mental image makes them sick to their stomach. They no longer care about their pride. They drop the act, the ego, the mind games, the fake confidence. It all disappears. Now, all they can think about is getting you back. And that fear, it drives them to do things they swore they'd never do. They'll reach out. They'll apologize. Maybe they send you long messages explaining how they finally realize how much you meant. Maybe they show up at your door desperate for another chance. Whatever they do, it's motivated by one thing: the overwhelming fear that they've lost you forever. But here's the truth. By the time they feel that fear, you're already gone. You've moved on. You've found your strength. You've reclaimed your independence. And most importantly, you don't need them anymore. Their fear is real, but it's too late. When they come crawling back, don't fall for it. Don't give them a second chance just because they're afraid. Let them face the consequences of their choices. Let them learn that you were never an option to be taken for granted. Because now, they finally understand what they lost. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You're already ahead of 99% of people. You've proven that you are a true Stoic, someone who seeks depth, wisdom, and understanding. And that makes you unstoppable. The 10th stage is the realization of emotional independence. This is where everything comes full circle. When you disappear, you're not just walking away from them, you're walking toward yourself, toward your freedom, toward your emotional clarity, toward your peace. The truth is that many people lose themselves in relationships. They spend so much time trying to make the other person happy, trying to prove their worth, that they forget something crucial. Your happiness is your own responsibility. You don't need to convince anyone to see your value. You don't need to fight for a place in someone's life. But when you vanish, that's when everything becomes clear. You finally realize you don't need their validation. You don't care what they think, what they feel, or what they want, because now you see the truth. Your happiness was never tied to them. And that's the most powerful realization of all. Here's the best part. They feel it too. They see that you're not the same person they once knew. You're stronger now. You're wiser. You're more confident. And they can sense it. They know you've outgrown them. And that terrifies them. This is where the tables turn. For good. They're still stuck in the same old patterns. Still seeking validation. Still playing the same games. But you've evolved. You've broken free from the cycle of needing approval. And now, their opinion means nothing. Own your emotional independence. Don't go back to your old ways. Don't let them think they still have power over your happiness. Don't give them the satisfaction of believing they can pull you back in. Because you've moved beyond that. And that's your biggest win.